Hello, greetings and whatnots, people of the internet. I'm here to prove that proprietary software is not evil. And I'm going to do that really simple. So if I open this in full screen, I go in here so you guys can really see what's going on here. Let's do this here. This is a super simple little Java program that I made while I had my morning coffee. That gets the username, the computer name, and it puts all open processes into a buffer and it prints it out into the terminal. Then we could then write this to a file with the right buffer, what I can't remember what it's called on the Java, and we can then send this to whoever have this telemetry thing going on in their system. That is telemetry. You're taking data from the computer, the username. We can go even more crazy if you want to. And let's just pretend right now I release this under a proprietary code or proprietary license, meaning that you can see the source code, you can modify the source code, blah blah blah. And now everyone will go and say, Kent, you just proved that it's evil. I just, right now, converted this whole thing into a GPL version 2 licensed software. I have to give you the source code if you ask for it, so you can see it modified and stuff like that. And you may say, oh, that's great. Now we can go in and remove this from the program. Well, let's pretend that I want to be really irritating. So I can make a folder. Underneath that, I can make another folder, call it this. Then I can make another folder, call it this. Then I can make another folder, call it there. I can make another folder, call it this here. Then in that folder here, oh well, let's just do it here. Imagine these here are files. All of these are files. And all of these files here, they will have they can have 50, 100 classes in there. And you don't need to do much or anything at all, but they could. And let's say there is 100 of these files. There's also over here. There's also a lot of files there. There's a lot of files in this one, a lot of files in this one, a lot of files in this one. So I can reference this class here. It's class main, so it's the main class one, but I could just make a telemetry class. And here's the thing, if I really want to be dubious, I don't need to call it telemetry gathering class. I can just call it information class, or I can call it spec class, or even configuration class. And then I can nest it into all of these folders within hundreds of other classes in a folder with tens or hundreds of other files. And unless you find the file that references this class, where I basically say status or telemetry or whatever, let's not call it telemetry, but let's say information.main, it should be called something other than main, so we can call this stats. So we do information.stats, and then I will invoke main here, or put this in another class and make an instance of that and gather that. Unless you find that in the main file, that could be in here, it could be down here, for example. Let's just call it J. And there can be, I've seen this, tens, hundreds of thousands of lines of code. So before you even find that little, that could be something of info dot stats, and we invoke it in some way. You get the idea here. It would probably be something like info and then name equals new info. I think this is how you would do it in C# anyway, and then you could do name dot stats. I think this should also work in Java, but this is how you do it in C#. But anyway, the idea is this: you have to look for these two lines in hundreds or thousands of lines of code, and you can't just say, "Oh, I'll do Control F and I will search for it," because you don't know what it's called. So this stuff here, this is just rudimentally not intrusive data collection. This here could be, or right now it is, in an open source project. This is how easy it is to hide bad shit in open source software. Because if I do it like this, and I can hide it in hidden folders. How many of you download source code, by the way? Not many of you. How many of you actually remember to turn on show hidden folders? Because I do that quite a lot at work. If I'm trying to hide something from the end user, aka I know the end user is going to mess around in the file structure because they think they are smart, but they're not so smart they turn on hidden folders. So some of these here could even be hidden folders. be in hidden folders. This could be a hidden folder. So you have to sit and read lines of code. And there's another thing I want to show you guys in a bit here. Have a look at this. And we are talking professionals right now. The reason for small code reviews to maximize efficiencies. Studies involving a personal software processor found that reviewers are most efficient with respect to maximizing defects identifying in review, like being sorry for my dyslexia, but they are, the short term is it 150 to 200 source lines of code per hour is what a trained developer can look at per hour. You have to look at it like this. They know what they're looking at. These are co-authors of the software or people that know the source code already. They're not like you sitting at home that can only do print hello world in Python. So let's see how many lines of code there is in Linux. There are 40 million. This is how many hours it will take if they can do 200 lines per hour. It's 200,000 hours it will take one person to go through the Linux kernel source tree. And the other thing is, this is just imagining that you're looking at one file. You're not looking at, you don't have to dig through a hierarchy of structures, like a development pattern structure, a philosophy, call it what you will. If it was a front end, they would probably use MVVM or something like that separates a lot of logics from the view and all those things. So you have different files, you have controllers, you have I commands in C# and all that shit. So you have to know where those folders are, you have to do all the connections and stuff like that. This is if you're only looking at one big file. 200,000 hours. And there may be some people that can review 500 lines of code, but you get the idea here. Imagine in Linux case, if Linus wanted to do it, or some of the maintainers wanted to do it, they could easily put in a class somewhere that did this, and then references it higher up in the hierarchy structure of the folder structure with 2 lines of code. Well, there would probably also be like a console, it would print out this to, or read it to a file, so this would be like something of that nature. So 3 lines of code. Instead of writing out to the console, again now we're mixing Java with C#, but almost the same. This would just be, in Java this would be system.out.print or is it ln? I think ln is new line. So now we keep it in Java. You can be lucky and find this in the first hour. You can also be unlucky and find it in hour 100,000 or 100,050. So imagine how many hours. Then you can say, okay, you can do it fast, but you need a team of a lot of people to do that. And this is again expecting that the person looking at the code knows the code, aka they know the design paradigms. They understand the coding language, and they understand it at an expert level. Like they can define or see small little issues way faster than the normal person can. I just right now told you how to do telemetry or bad things in open source software that will make it massively difficult for the end user that even can see the source code to identify or find that thing. And we have had this in the past where there have been things in open source software where they're not done like bad things, but they're taking a little bit of telemetry here, like your IP address, your host name and stuff like that. And it's been in there for years before people figured it out. And the only reason they figured it out was not because they looked at the source code, but they looked at, they used Wireshark or something like that to look at network traffic, and they saw that this little program here was communicating on a regular basis to the internet, while it should not be doing it. Like, why are you communicating to the internet? This is how most people figure out if there's telemetry in a program. It's not by looking at the source code like we do here, it's looking at how do the program behave. If it's like a picture viewer program, it should not call to some random server in the cloud to open a picture, unless it gathers metadata from the internet. But anyway, it should not talk to the internet. So you put something like Wireshark in front of it, stuff like that. You see, oh, it's communicating every 4 seconds or every 30 seconds to the internet, even if it's just open and doing nothing. That's how they figure out telemetry most of the time, not by looking at the source code. Why? Because it's super easy to just put a program that see this communication, if this was sending it out, instead of printing out to the command line here, it would be printing it out or sending it to a cloud services or a server in the cloud instead of doing this. It's super easier to just put some network sniffer in front of the program, between the program and the internet connection, than it is to actually read the source code because of this. That's also why most problems are being found without reading the source code, because of user behavior. So if I put this in, I will get a crash, and then they will read like the try-catch factor and see that, oh, you're basically giving us a buffer overflow race condition and stuff like that. Most things are not being found because people actually physically sit and look at the source code. They only do that when they identify a problem. And then, okay, we have a problem. Then they go to the developers and say, there is a problem. Your program does something it should not be doing. And then the developers that know where this little problem could be hidden, it will also take them a little bit of time to figure out what class or what function or method is doing this thing. But they know the program really well, so they know they have to go into into infinity, and they have to go in and look at bob.j. There's a fucking file in there that's doing crazy shit. But that can take them hours, and then they go in and fix it. And this is how things like this are being done. I've given you the recipe for how to bake in telemetry in an open source project and maybe hide it from the user for a long, long time. The smaller the project, the easier it is to find. The bigger the project, so LibreOffice, VLC, Audacity, like they are not small projects. They're not massive, but they're not small. But it will be easy to hide stuff like this in here. Because if you are a Linux user right now, and you are watching this, and you know a little bit about Python, you will have no idea what this means. Well, you kind of know that this is a variable because I called it var, but I could also call this Joe. And when you read over this, info name equal new info. And I make a string called Joe. That don't sound really weird. Equal name.stats. So you think, oh, we're just getting a name about some Joe character in the program. Why the fuck are we doing that? And then we're printing that out to a text file, or we're printing it out to the command line. This here in of itself don't seem too suspicious. Instead of calling it Joe, I could also call it like arrow. So you would think, oh, this is something that catches an arrow. If there's a problem, it would then catch a problem under the class name or in the method stats that will put that and print it out to the commander. So if there's an arrow, you will see what the arrow is. You will not think 1 second about this could be actually a telemetry program while it's in the GPL's licensed software. Yeah, if this is all what the program does, you will find it 100% right at the second you look at it. You'll see something dubious. But if this is nested into thousands of lines of code, in subfolders after subfolder, in hidden folders, in hidden files, and they're using generic naming like this to hide it, you need to be like some form of fucking alien genius to figure this one out. Because if you just read this, oh, there is a class, they import a class called info, we're giving it the name, and we're invoking a new instance of that info class, and then down here we're making a variable that then say name.stats because we want to access the stats method, and then we're printing it out, and because we're calling the variable that is a string, so the stats class is returning a string apparently, it looks like it's just catching an arrow. It's a try-catch kind of thing, you would think. And again, how many of you will then be like, I probably should investigate it even further. We'll go in and see, oh shit, that's not just a try-catch arrow, that's actually it's getting my username, my computer name, and it's reading all the open processes I have on my computer on Windows, and it's sending it to someone crazy ass idiot somewhere. It could be your IP address, it could be whatever the fuck they want to send you. And having this in mind also, that it will take 200,000 hours to look through all lines of the Linux kernel, if you know what it is. Let's just say, because a lot of programs, they creep up, and it's not uncommon. I think like they say that A program is a medium-sized program if it exceeds 10,000 lines of code. That would be 50 hours one person can do, so a couple of days. If you know the code, and you know the design structure, and you are super intimate with how it's going on, if you are a hobbyist and stuff like that, I will say we are down in the, and this is just from my experience talking to people and looking at how I've helped train a few people up in rudimentary programming the last few years, and if they have no idea or they just know simple Python and stuff like that, and they read C#, Java, like another programming language that's not Java, or sorry, Python, they have a really hard time understanding that other language. And I would say they could even go lower than 50 lines per hour. So for a novice, let's say me, it will take 200 hours to just read. This is again if I know what I'm looking, or I'm a newbie, but I still kind of know what I'm looking at. It would take 200 hours. And I would probably not, as a newbie, catch this here. Most of you guys right now, if you saw this in the source code, as much as you think you are smart, you will just, oh yeah, that makes sense, I will go over it. And you don't look at all of the lines. You only go back to the subclasses or the modules, or call it what you will, if you see something suspicious in the main file or the file that invoke that class method, call it what you will. Then you will go and investigate. If this was called, forgive me for my bad spelling, now you will look at the file. You will hover over it if you open up the project in an IDE, or you'll figure out where is this info file. Is there a file called info? We can call this info. Where is that? Or where in the structure is there a class called info? Because they gave it the name telemetry, and then they're doing telemetry.stats. Now you would look, and people are doing this right now, both in proprietary software and open source software. What I did right now, I took a proprietary software, I made it open source, and I showed you how easy it is to hide it in the code from the common user. And I say the common user, not an expert. And how long it will take if it's like 1 million. Let's just say 5,000 hours. How many of you are going to sit in your spare time for like hundreds of hours or even 20 hours looking at a source code, and you probably don't even know what you're looking at because you are super newbies? This here should tell you that proprietary software is not evil. It's the developers that are evil. Open source software is not good or evil. It's the developers that are good or evil. This is what this should tell you. It's super easy to hide bad shit in open source. It's just more easy to hide it when you can't see the source code. If you're a gamer, welcome to telemetry. You see it's taking it from my documents for the Dragon Age settings. This is telemetry from Dragon Age Origin Ultimate Edition. This is telemetry. If you've ever played Dragon Age Origin Ultimate Edition, you'll probably not know this file is in your username documents by Dragon Age settings folder. You'll probably not know that it's in there. But it tells you that it's being updated and stuff like that. And if there's a crash report, that's how I got this, because it asked me to send this to them in a crash report. You'll probably not know this is in there, because you just click either OK or no and don't read what the fuck is going on. This is telemetry. This is a game from, I can't even remember when it came out, but many years ago. And this is a proprietary software. But if I open source this, you will not, or if they open sourced it, you will not know it did this, because Dragon Age is probably close to 1 million, if not over 1 million lines of code. Are you willing to sit and learn the design paradigms of how they do C# classes, or C++, or C classes? Are you going to learn the C programming language? Because you need to understand the C programming language on a high level to be efficient at code reviews. You can't do code reviews if you know how to print hello world in Python, or know how to set up a class in Python. You can only review simple classes in Python, not in C#, not in Java, not in C, not in C++. The license means nothing about how good or bad a software is. It's who is developing it. Me. I made, if I put this on GitHub right now, I made an evil open source GPL license software by just changing the license. The code didn't do this automatically. This didn't, you see, right now, I put this in here. This means that this is a GPL v2 license. Did this delete itself? Did this do this? No. It's still there, buddy. But that's the narrative that a lot of the so-called experts in Linux will say, that open source will not make it evil because this can't happen. I just showed you how easy that can happen. How easy it is to fool the non-so-knowledgeable person. It's that easy to fool people. And I see this almost daily happening in open source. And when I mean happening, I don't mean that they are fooling it by putting in telemetry. I mean that they are using naming conventions. They are doing this where they nest things into folders and stuff like that. That makes it super difficult to actually figure out where these things are happening. I see that happening all the time because they follow either MVC paradigms, they follow other Viber paradigms, or they follow like waterfall, that's not a design paradigm, but they follow like paradigms from the 80s and stuff like that. Where you kind of have to understand, okay, or they follow their own paradigm. I do that a lot when I do hobby projects. I have my own little structure of where I put folders and I put files and stuff like that. Because that just makes sense to me. A lot of people do that also. But it takes you have to look at all the files, you have to see where they're placed and stuff like that. That takes hours. And again, I see that all the time in open source. That if I taught someone to read simple Java, C++, not C++, C#, or Python, they will still not be able to find something like this here. Because of the way that the developer have put it into subfolders or even hidden it or are using oncoming naming conventions to hide some maybe not bad stuff, but stuff they would not like you to see. And it can be for security reasons. Let's say they have a buffer with your password in it and stuff like that. You will not call it stored password, you know. You will call it something that looks not so enticing for hackers to look at or test at. You get what I'm coming at here. The license means nothing. It's the developers. It's the people in charge you should be angry at. If you see open source or proprietary software doing things you don't like, don't blame the license. Blame the developers. Because you can open source that license, and unless someone in the spare time wants to change that, it's not going to change. If I publish this here and I didn't make this video, none of you guys and girls will know that this existed. So nobody's going to change it. It will still be there. That means there will still be an open source program that takes telemetry. Will people use it? Probably not, but it still exists. And I could be way more aggressive with the telemetry gathering here. But just because it's open source don't mean that when I put this on GitHub or SourceForge, this will automatically just be like, this will not happen. It will just not automatically be deleted. It can be there for decades until someone finds it or uses it and stuff like that. Luckily enough, this is all this program does, so it's super easy to find. But again, to regurgitate myself, what if this program was millions lines of code or tens of thousands of lines of code? And the person that look at it is just looking at it for fun. They don't really know what they're looking at. They don't even know what this means. They just see username in quotation marks plus username. If they're a little bit mathematically inclined, they will kind of see that, well, you are adding two things together. You should kind of see that. But what the fuck does this mean? What does this mean? Well, this should give you a hint. Anyway, a thing to think about. Because I'm tired of people saying that if you just do this to all programs, there will not be any bad programs, telemetry will never be out there, and blah blah blah. It will. Because they will do devious shit like this. The world will not be better if everything was open source. It just meant that they will hire more clever developers to hide their nefarious activities. And again, most telemetry activities are not being found in the source code. They are being found by program behavior. See you all later. Bye bye.